Hello, this is Teresa. I'm back with another video tutorial for Dare to be Artsy. Today I'll be showing you how I created these little elephant themed baby cards, and I used an interesting tool in the part of this process. So I'm using the baby elephant stamp set from Dare to be Artsy. I already have a white card base ready and a panel that is cut to a 1/4 inch smaller than that, but this time I'll be putting that on the inside of the card rather than the outside. If you're intrigued, keep watching because I'll show you how I created this crib that's part of the design. And I found this on the web and I printed out the picture, and then I tried reprinting at a couple of different sizes, on the right at 35%, on the left at 40%, and just compared this to the elephant stamp, and it was a little bit too big for the 35% resize, but it worked just about perfect with the 40% size, so that's the one I'm going to use. I'm going to be tracing that image onto the cardstock that's going, or piece of cardstock that will go on the inside of the card, so I just want to be sure that it actually fits over that image. So I'm going to put that aside for now, and I'm going to stamp the elephant on a separate piece of Nina white solar white cardstock using Memento black ink, and I'll actually end up stamping the elephant twice on this same piece of paper. I'm just not showing it right now because I'm going to be creating two cards, one for a boy and one for a girl. So I have my light tracing pad out, and I've put the crib behind that piece of white cardstock so I can start tracing it. And what I'm using here to trace it is a Memento tuxedo black pen, so it's the same color as the ink pad I used to stamp the elephant with. And at first I started to just do this freehand, but then I decided it would probably be easier if I just used a straight edge when I'm drawing all the straight lines, since there are quite a few of them in this image. And as I was getting warmed up on my drawing, I saw a couple of places where I felt I had messed up, and I went back over those lines later after I had it off the tracing pad. So this is getting close to the moment where I think better of it and decide to get a straight edge. And here's my T ruler, and it's clear so I can see right through it and line it up with all the different lines that I need to draw from the image, and that made it much easier to complete this. And once I finish all of that, I'm ready to add the elephant, which I've already had stamped earlier. Now what I want to do is create a look where it looks like the elephant is inside the crib. So I'm putting the crib image on top of the elephant, and I'm putting it approximately where I think the face will be in front of it later. So the body is inside of the crib, and the face, including the ears and nose, will be hanging outside. So I'm going to be drawing in those areas of the stamped image that can be seen from in between the crib slats. So there's actually not a lot of drawing that's necessary to get this accomplished, so it's not as difficult as it may look. I will repeat this entire process again in order to make a second image. In fact, I didn't really have to do the steps again. I just had to use this image once I finished drawing in all this detail from the part of the body that's inside of the crib, and then I can just use that to trace over my other copy. Or if you wanted to, you could use a copier. An inkjet printer ink seems to be compatible and doesn't bleed when you use it with Copic markers, and that's what I'm going to be using to color this image. So now that I'm finished, you could see just the part of the body I drew in there in between the slats, and then I'm going to trace over that entire image there on the right hand side again, so I end up with two images. So this is where I'm showing you where I was about to copy that image over and went back to the tracing pad, and I'm just taping this together so that it stays put whenever I go take it to the tracing pad again. If you don't have one on hand, you might be able to accomplish something by using the sunlight out of a bright window, or if you have a glass table, maybe you could put a lamp or something beneath it. Now I'm going to show you what I'm going to be doing with the two stamped elephant images. I'm just stamped this on a piece of copy paper, and I realized at this point that I would be able to just use the head and just trim off the body on the elephant, because by the time I do that and put the face over the front of the crib, then I really don't need that to be there anymore. So this turned out to be quite easy thing to do. And so I'm only going to need to color the face and ears of the elephant on each one of those images. So now I'm putting one of the finished crib pieces inside the card base, because I'm going to need to find the perfect place to cut the window. So I'm using temporary adhesive for now, because I still need to color this piece, and I don't want to do that when it's attached to the card base, because Copic markers do bleed through. So now I'm putting my elephant head approximately where I'm going to want it to go, and then I'm going to close the front. I'm going to get one of the wavy framelit dies, as you can see, and I went over to the light pad and had it on so that I could see where to place that, so that the face of the elephant would be peeking through once that's cut out. And now I'll go to my die cut machine and cut out that window. And now I'm testing the placement again, and it looks pretty good right where it is. And now I've colored the faces of the two elephants. These are the three Copic colors I used, the warm grays, in order to do that part. And I also colored the body of the elephants. In this frame, I've already colored the majority of the crib, at least the wood part of it. And I'm just deciding how much gray to put in there. I don't need a whole lot of it. I just need to figure out kind of where the brown ends and the gray would begin. I don't have to color in the entire area right there, and I left some white space in between in case I needed to make some adjustments. So as I put this together, I used some 3M foam adhesive to just slightly pop up the head of the elephant. I didn't want it poking out real far, but just enough that you could tell it looks like the face of the baby elephant is peeking over the front of the crib. And the reason I'm being so meticulous about adjusting this is because I'm attempting to make sure that when the card is closed, that you can't see the color of the blanket. The reason I wanted to do this is I thought it would be a fun card to use, say, for a gender reveal party, or it could be a birth announcement, wherever when it's open you just see it's a girl or it's a boy. And if you wanted to incorporate it into the design, you could put a printout maybe of the baby's birth information on the inside of the card somewhere, or a little insert, just whatever makes the most sense. So now that I finally have it positioned perfectly, I'm going to add glue to the back of this panel. And now you can see why it was I did not want to do the coloring while it was already adhered to the inside of the cards. That way it makes sure that that stays hidden. And so now I have that part in place and I can finish decorating it. In hindsight, I think it would have been better to decorate the front of the card and then put this in afterwards, but it was already done, so I just went ahead and proceeded with it this way. And when I made the second card, I adjusted for that. Now, I'm using this gray and white pattern paper. This is from Dare to be Artsy, and I will link to the paper pattern color in the description box below. And I'm lining up these two wavy framelit dies. They are right next to each other as far as size in the set. And I'll tape both these down, so by the time this comes out through the die cut machine, I'll have a frame to put over that front window. And I'll also be cutting the tab I'm using for the sentiment on the front of the card out of that same paper. I don't think I actually showed this on the screen. So now I'm gluing that little gray frame in place, and as I looked at this, I was thinking about how it needed something else. So while I was thinking about what that was going to be, I opened the card and I added "It's a Girl" at the top right hand corner where it's not visible through the front of the card. And now is when I decided to use some light gray ink that's very similar to the color of the cardstock, and I'm using the present that's out of this same stamp set. Now there are some flowers in the stamp set and a crown, so there's some other choices for things that you could stamp on the front. I decided to go with a gift because I consider a baby to be a gift, and they were really cute once I got them on here. When I made the second card, I made sure to do this stamping before I added the gray frame that is over that window. And now I'm about to stamp the sentiment on a piece of die cut pattern paper. It's the same thing I used on front or by the window. And I cut that out using the Dare to Be Artsy Fancy Framelit set. I used the smallest die from that set to cut this out. And I'm stamping this in black Versamark ink. And then I'll pop that up with some foam adhesive on the front of the card. And that completes the card. And so I'll show you a peek at the other completed one I did for the boy related theme. But before I get there, I wanted to add that I realized that I had not put any more detail on the blanket. So I'm using some Versamark ink and one of the flowers that's inside that stamp set. And I'm adding some Versamark ink to each one of those little bright pink circles on the blanket. And then I'll put white detailed embossing powder on top of that and heat set it to give the blanket just a little bit more detail. And I do something similar for the boys design, but in that case I used a very small anchor stamp that's from, I think it's Sail Away stamp set. I will put the name of that below in the description box so you can find that stamp set if that's something you're interested in looking at. So I'm just using a brush to brush away the powder that I don't need. So that's why I didn't worry too much about stamping the flowers if they overlapped with the edging of the blanket, because I knew I was just going to brush that away before I heat set it. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a thumbs up and leave me a comment. And here are links to other videos on the channel that you might enjoy watching. Until next time, I dare you to get artsy.